everybody, it's Teresa. Welcome to my channel. I'm going to make some brick stitch earrings today. Not these. These are just examples. Brick stitch is not a hard stitch. Like I always say, if I can do it, anybody can do it. A few videos ago, I did a pair of earrings where I wire wrapped some fire polish beads around this component. And I mentioned when I did it that I had originally bought these components to brick stitch around them. And I have brick stitched around them. And a lady sent me a message and asked me if I would do a video on brick stitching around a component. And of course I don't mind at all. I enjoy doing brick stitch, as you'll be able to see when you see all the earrings I've got laid out here. This pair, I'm probably not gonna do as big a pair as this today, but this is a lot like it's using the same exact component there in the middle, that teardrop component. It's the same exact component. You don't have to do it, you can do it around any shape. These are around circles, circle components. I've got these triangles here that I brick stitched and hung off the bottom of them. I've got another triangles here, the American flag pattern. You don't have to have a component. You can just brick stitch with beads. All these are just beads. Some of these patterns, most of these patterns I bought on Etsy. A few of them I used the brick stitch graph paper and made. I think I did these myself. See, I have these. The nature of brick stitch is that when you do a row and then you do a row on top of the row you just did, it decreases. And like if you do a row of 12, the next row will be 11, and the next row will be 10. That's just the way it works, and that it tapers like that. That's how you get these diamonds. You can use it to taper off bracelets, especially herringbone, because in brick stitch, the beads sit with the holes facing up, just like they do in herringbone. So if you're doing a herringbone bracelet and it's pretty wide and you want to taper it down and put a clasp on it, you can transition into brick stitch and taper down so that you can put your clasp on it. So it's good for that. And then you can increase and decrease in a brick stitch so that you can do something like this. You can make shapes. I've got every Christmas I've got this pattern that I found on the internet many years ago. It was a free pattern, and it's Santa Claus and Mrs. Santa Claus, and Santa Claus is one of the earrings and Mrs. Santa Claus is the other one of the earrings. And I make that every year, and they sell. I don't have an example to show you because they always just sell right away because everybody thinks they're really cute. So there's just a whole lot you can do with brick stitch. And when I was going through my earrings to find some examples, my husband was there, and he pulled these out and he said, "Here, you forgot these." And I said, "No, these are peyote." But it is hard to tell the difference between brick stitch and peyote sometimes. But this is peyote. It's just even count peyote made into a square and turned into an earring. But he was just insistent that this was the same as these others that I had pulled out, and I guess he thinks he knows more about it than I do. But anyway, today I'm going to be using, of course, I got these two little components here and some ear wires. And I'm going to be using a couple of colors of delicas, and I hope you'll be able to see what I'm doing, but I have to use these little beads. These are 11-0 Durcoat Opaque Pansy is the color on these. And this is Durcoat Dyed Opaque Spruce. And then I've got these. They came in a Potomac beads subscription box that I got one time. It says Durcoat Opaque. I don't know what the rest of that says. Looks like it says SPAN. I don't know what the rest of that is. It's just kind of a mustardy yellow color is what it is. And I have some 15-0 galvanized Miyuki seed beads that I'm going to use. And then I have these. They're 2mm. I don't know what the color is, but I thought it was pretty close to this Delica color here. I'm going to kind of embellish around the outside of it. These are 2mm, but you can use lots of different sizes like these this example here, I think these are probably 2 by 3 millimeter rondelles around the outside of that one, and then that round one that's laying here somewhere that I had. It's right here. It's right here at my finger. There it is. These are, they're either 3 or 4 millimeter bicones around the outside of that. So there's lots of different beads you can use and embellishments you can do and stuff. I've got my 8-pound fire line. You can use 6-pound. I just had 8-pound laying here. I've got 2 size 11 tulip beading needles. Of course, I'm only going to use one, but and then I have one of them threaded already with a stop bead and about 6 inches of tail that I can sew in later. And I have my scissors to cut my fire line. And then I have my chain nose pliers to flatten my thread so I can get it through the needle, and to open my earring hook at the end when I get it done. I think that's everything. So I'll get some of this out of the way and some of my beads poured out, and I'll be back. Okay, I've got my component here and some of my, what I say they're called, pansy colored beads. I'm going to call them wine colored. That's what they look like to me. See if I can get in close here, and hopefully you can see what I'm doing. And I'm probably going to start this differently than you'll probably see other people talk about how they start it. Most people secure their thread to the component by tying the end of the thread into a knot on the component, like, you know, right over left, left over right. For some reason that doesn't work for me. My knot always comes loose. So I use a stop bead. So I'm going to pick up one of my wine colored beads. I'm going to drop it down here to my stop bead. I'm going to take my thread through the back of my component, and I'm going to pull it up until I get that bead and my stop bead up there. Up on top of the component there, just laying on top of the component like that. It doesn't matter where we are right now. It doesn't matter whether we're up here at the point or not. We're going to be able to move it once we get a few beads on here. So I'm coming through. Well, I dropped everything. Got my bead sitting on top of there with my stop bead. My thread's coming through the wine colored bead going that way. I'm going to put my bead back up through the other side of the bead, and I'm going to pull it through, and I'll just pull on both of my threads, and that's going to sit my bead on top of the component there with the holes facing up, and that's what we want. So now I'm going to do that again. I'm going to pick up one of my beads, drop it down to my bottom of my thread, I'm going to set it on top of my component there next to that other bead. And I'm not worried yet that it's not sitting straight up. I'm just going to lay it there. I'm going to go through the back of the component with my thread, my needle and thread, pull all my thread through, and now I'm coming through, my thread is coming through the bead left to right. I'm going to put it in the side that it's not coming through right to left, and I'm going to pull my thread through, and that sits that bead. Now, of course, they're not together. All you got to do is just hold on to it and just pull, and it'll scoot it up there next to that bead. And see, they'll move, so we can get it up here close to our point when we get ready to. So I'm just going to do that again. I'm going to pick up one of my beads, drop it down to the end of my thread and down here to my component. I'm going to lay it against my component. Just hold it there with my finger. I'm going to go through the back of the component with my needle and thread. And now my thread is coming through my bead left to right. I'm going to put my thread through the bead right to left. Pull my thread through, and that sets my bead on there straight up, and then I'm just going to pull on my thread like that, and it'll scoot it up to the other beads. And now I'm going to do that again. I'm going to pick up a bead, drop it down to my component, hold it against the component there. Now I'm going to go through the back of the form. My bead's going through right now. It's going through the component left to right. I'm going to put my thread through this right side and go through right to left. Just looping through that bead there. And that puts that bead sitting with the hole straight up. And then I'm just going to scoot it up against these others. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to pick up a bead. Drop it down to my component, my form. Hold it against there. Go through the back of the component. Go into this side of the bead that my thread's not already coming through. Pull my thread through. Puts my beads with the hole standing face up, and I'm going to push it up against the other bead. I'll do that again. I'm going to pick up one of my beads, drop it down to my component, just lay it there, go through the back, and now I'm going to come through the opposite way the thread's already coming through. So I'm going to come through on this side, pull it through, sets my bead straight up, and I'm going to scoot it over against that bead. And that's all there is to it. I'm going to do that for all the way around this component for the first row. Now you don't have to go all the way around the component. If you want to come down here and leave the top half exposed and just brick stitch around the bottom half, or you can do this half and leave this half side exposed, whatever kind of pattern you want to do. But I'm going to go around the whole thing with my little wine colored beads here, and then I'll be back and we'll do the second row. Okay, I've got my first row done here, and I'm going to start with my green delicas. Now, you don't have to use delicas. You can use it regular round seed beads. I like to use delicas at least for the first row because they're cylindrical and they're flat on the bottom and they sit real nicely against the frame. But you can use regular seed beads. I've done that before. I've even used those little tiny Miyuki Cube beads for the first row because they sit real nice against the frame too. But you can use whatever you want. And another thing, you'll hear people tell you, and it's true, when you start brick stitch, you always pick up 2 beads to begin with. I didn't on that first row because, and most people will, when they attach it to the component, they'll pick up 2 beads to start out with. I don't do that because for some reason I can't get my beads to lay flat when I do that. I don't know why. So I just pick up 1 bead, but most people will pick up 2 beads when they attach it to the component. And I'm going to be picking up 2 beads to begin my row from now on. And I'm going to go under the thread bridge, but I'm not going to go under this first thread bridge. I'm going to go under the second thread bridge. I'm going to pull my beads through. Now, most people, again, this is where I'm different. Those beads are not sitting up straight. See, their little holes are not sitting up straight up. Most people will tell you to go back through this second green bead, go back down this first green bead, and come back up this second green bead to straighten up your beads. That doesn't work for me either. I don't know why. I go up this second green bead, and then I go down this first green bead, and get my needle in there. The second green bead, or the second pink bead under there, the pink bead on the diagonal there, and pull my thread through. And then go back up this third pink bead and back out the second green bead. And that straightens up my two little green beads there. Gets them to sit straight. Now I'm going to go back and look at that and see if you could see anything I was doing. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I think you could probably see that as well as you're going to be able to see it. So now, because I skipped that first thread bridge, my second row is going to be one less bead than my first row. And I counted my first row, and I've got 38 delicas on my first row. So this next row of green will be 37. And then the next row I'm going to do with these little mustard color beads, and that'll be 36. And that's all I'm going to do. And then I'm going to do my little embellishment. I don't always count these. I just do it until it's as full as I want it to be. But I wanted to count them this time because I want my last row to end on an even number. Because for the little embellishment I'm going to do, it's going to be helpful if I'm doing an even number at the end. So that's why I did that. So I'm going to, and I'll show you why that is when I get to the embellishment part. But I'm going to pick up another green bead. I'm going to go under the next thread bridge. Pull my thread through, go back up through the bottom of the green bead that I just put on, and that puts that one on. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to pick up another green bead, go under my next thread bridge, pull my thread through, and I can almost guarantee, well, you can't see me. I can almost guarantee you this will happen. It happens to me all the time, and I have done a lot of brick stitch and made a great many of these earrings, but it still happens to me all the time. When you go back up the bottom hole of this green bead, and you think you're just going up through the bottom hole of this green bead, oftentimes you're going back through your thread bridge and you just don't realize it. And when you do that, your bead's going to fall off. Happens all the time. Nothing to worry about. Just pick it up and do it over. It happens to me all the time. It happens to me. I'm liable to go through this one and think I'm going through just the bead and it fall off, and then do it again and it fall off again. Sometimes it does it to me multiple times on the same bead. It's just something that's almost certain to happen. So don't let that get you frustrated. So now I'm going to pick up another green bead. I'll go under my next thread bridge, pull my thread through, go back up and under, go back up from the bottom, pull my thread through, and that sets my little bead up there, the hole's facing up. I'll pick up another one, go under my thread bridge, pull my thread through, go back up. I keep getting out of frame. Go back up through the bottom of that same bead, pull my thread through. I'm going to pick up one more and try to stay in frame this time. I'm going to go under my next thread bridge, pull my thread through, go back up through the bottom of that bead, pull my thread through. I'll pick up one more. I said one more the last time, but I don't know how good I'm in frame here. I'm going to go through my next thread bridge, pull my thread through, go back up the bottom of that same bead, and pull my thread through. So I'm just going to do that all the way around until I get to the other side over here, and then I'll be back and we'll do the next row. Okay, I've got my second row done here, and now I'm going to do my third row, and it's going to be just exactly like the row I just did, except I'm using regular beads instead of delicate, regular 11/0s instead of delicates. So I got 2 beads. I'm not going to go under my first thread bridge. I'm going to go under the second one. Pull my thread through. Now I'm going to have to straighten this. Well, I'm having the awfulest time staying in frame. I'm going to take that back out in case you couldn't see me. Okay, I'm going to pick up 2 beads. I'm not going to go under the first thread bridge. I'm going to go under the second thread bridge. Pull my thread through. Now my beads are not straight, so I'm going to go back up this second yellow bead I just put on, or mustard colored, or whatever it is. I'm going to go back down this first yellow bead and back down the second green bead in this row on the diagonal, like that. Pull my thread through. I'm going to go up this third green bead in that row. And then I'm going to go back up the second yellow bead there. And that straightens up my beads. There. Now I'm going to pick up a bead, go under my next thread bridge, go back up the bottom of that same bead, I'm going to pick up another bead, go under the next thread bridge, go up the bottom of that same bead, I'm going to pick up another one, go under the next thread bridge, go back up the bottom of that same bead, pick up another one, go under the next thread bridge, if I can find where it is, I think this is the next thread bridge. It's kind of hard to see when you switch shapes of beads, but pretty sure that's it. Yeah. I'm going to pick up another one, go under the next thread bridge, go back up through the bead, and there, look, that fell off. It's like I told you, I knew it would happen. So I went back under the thread bridge instead of just through the bead. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to go under the thread bridge and try to just get back up through the bead this time. Okay, there, that worked that time. Now if you're doing like 8/0s instead of 11/0s on top of, if you're doing a bigger bead on top of a smaller bead, you're probably not going to be going through every single thread bridge because the beads are bigger, so they would get crowded if you went under every single thread bridge with bigger beads. So you would just have to, as you go, you know, judge where you want, which thread bridge you want to go through next to make your beads not be crowded. So I'm going to finish this, and then when I come back I'll do the embellishment. Okay, I've got my next row done, and I was wrong. I said I started my first row, I had 38 beads. Then my second row was 37. I thought this row was going to come out to be 36, but it only came out to be 34. And that can happen. I mean, these are the same size beads. They're 11/0s, but because they're round, they take up a little bit more room than a little bit more surface area than the Delicas do. So evidently, as going around here, I skipped a couple of thread bridges because I thought, you know, it didn't look right. I didn't realize I was skipping a couple of thread bridges, but I must have, because probably putting it under the very next thread bridge looked like it was going to crowd my beads. And I just probably didn't even see that I was skipping it because it looked like the next thread bridge was not the next one, but the next one. So I ended up with 34 of these little mustard colored beads instead of 36 like I thought I was going to. But I mean, when you're doing this, if you're doing a different shape bead or a different size bead like 8/0s, you just, like I said, you just have to judge as you go along which thread bridge looks best next to keep your beads from being crowded and all that. But this is fine because I wanted to end on an even number to do this little embellishment I'm going to do, and I've got 34 here, so that's going to work. So I'm going to take my little 2mm crystals here. I don't know, these are kind of a fuchsia color, I guess. And I've got some 15/0s here, and I'm going to take a 15/0 and one of my little 2mm crystals and a 15/0. Now you don't have to stop here. You can keep going. You can do another row of ever how many more rows of anything you want to. Another row of 11/0s, go into 8/0s, just whatever you want to do. But I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to do an 11/0, one of my 2mm, and 11/0. And I'm going to go, this is not even brick stitch. I'm going to go from this bead to the next bead. Pull my thread through. Put a little, kind of a little picot there, trim. Now I'm going to go up the next yellow bead. Pick up, I might have said 11/0, I meant 15/0. 15/0. Little crystal bead here. 15/0. And I'm going to go down the next yellow bead there. And I'm going to go up the next yellow bead. So see, I'm going in one, or out one and in one, and that's why I needed it to be an even number so it would work out at the end. So I'm going to do a 15/0, one of my little 2mm, and a 15/0. And I'm going to go from the top of this bead into the top of this bead, the next bead. Pull my thread through, and I'm going to go up the next bead, pick up a 15/0, a crystal, and a 15/0. Go from the top of this bead into the top of the next bead. Sometimes you have to position your beads to sit the way you want them to. Now I'm going to go up the next yellow bead, do a 15/0, a 2mm, and a 15/0. Coming out the top of this yellow bead, I'm going to go into the top of this yellow bead. And that just puts a little bling around the outside of my earring there. So I'm going to finish the rest of it, and then I'll come back and we'll sew the threads in. Okay, I've got all my little embellishments on here now. Now I'm just going to sew my thread in. And all I'm going to do, I'm not going to tie any half-hitch knots. I'm coming out the bottom of this yellow bead right here. I'm just going to sew down through my beads several times, back and forth, until my thread's in there well enough that it's not going to come out. So I'm going to just always sewing on the diagonal, and then just coming back up through. Just make sure not to cross over any beads. Just sew on the diagonal, and then go across to your bead next to that one, and sew down. Get my thread in there, my needle in there. Just going to sew down that bead. Try not to get it caught around my stop bead, which I am doing. And just go down one of these pink beads. Go back up the pink bead next to it. The green bead on the diagonal. Go down the green bead next to that one. The pink bead on the diagonal. And I think that's enough, so I'm going to cut off. And now I'm just going to take my stop bead off of here and sew it in just like I sewed that one in. And then I'm going to make the other earring to go with this earring, and then I'll be back. Okay, I've got them all done now. I've decided I'm going to add a little bit of chain to the top so that it'll hang a little bit lower than if I put it directly on the earring finding. So I've got 3 little links of chain here, and I have a 5mm jump ring. I'm just going to put my earring on here. Try to get a hold of the end of my chain. Put it on here. Close it back up. I'm just going to take my ear wire here. Open that up. Thread the other end of my chain on it like that. So there we go, that's what I got. I think my chain's trying to be kinked there. There we go, I had it turned around. Okay, there we go. Alright, now let me get some of my stuff cleaned up and I'll be back. Okay, there we go, all done. A little pair of brick stitch earrings. I hope y'all have enjoyed this video. If you've never done brick stitch and you decide you want to try it, I hope this video is helpful. I hope you were able to see what I was doing and all. As always, thank you all so much for joining me today. I really appreciate those of you who have subscribed to my channel and watched my videos and liked and commented on my videos. I have a website where I sell my jewelry. It's Teresa's Handmade Jewelry, and I'll put a link to it in the description box below in case you're interested, along with a link to my Facebook and Instagram and my email. If you haven't, I'd really love it if you'd subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're notified when I upload a new video. So until next time, I hope y'all have a great day. Take care.